I changed my like I started volunteering at the kids' school 3 afternoons a week. So I went from no outside obligation to 9 hours of outside obligation. And that was too much too fast. And then I had a kid sick on one of my non-tutoring days. And I was just like, oh my gosh, now this week I have like 1 day to do the things I need to do.
So you had,
so
you're just trying to find balance within your new.
Yeah. And so I've gone down to 2 days and that feels really good. But then my husband on Wednesday, because the National Day of Mourning, and the Fed was basically closed down, and so it's just like, oh, there's no rhythm routine. So I have not done self-care, and I've been feeling it, and so that's been.
Okay, very good. So today is December 8th, 2018, and we're just sharing a little bit about how the last couple of weeks have gone. And so Maria's had a lot happen in the last couple of weeks. How long have you been adding the volunteer work? Two weeks or just one?
So this will be my this was my 3rd week. Okay. And so I did 2 weeks of 3 days a week, and then it was just too much, and so I went down to 2 days a week.
Okay. And so you're just trying to work out the new
rhythm
schedule of how that's going to look.
Finishing laundry and cooking real meals.
Now, one thing you did share a while ago is that you were trying to pack the meals in the evening. Is that still?
So I don't pack them in the evening. I still pack them in the morning, but I start doing all my morning work by 6 o'clock. And so by starting it by 6 o'clock, we can all be sitting down for breakfast by 6:30.
Okay.
And then I take the dog for a walk, and then we go to school.
Okay. So you're doing it in the morning.
I'm doing it in the morning, but it's everything's done in the morning. But one of the things I need to work towards now is like having the night before having a planned meal for myself for lunch, because otherwise it's like grabbing and starving, and yeah. So we're working on that.
Yep, working on that. Okay, so the review and reflection, the metabolic power of pleasure, page 102. Just a couple things that we talked about last week is the times we overeat most are when we are anxious, stressed, or unaware. And I guess it's becoming aware that we have anxiety or stress, or that we are eating in a state of unawareness. That is like the first step, just noticing, so that we can, if we can just stop, the panic a little bit, then that should really calm down the frequency of overeating. So we're always looking at things that we can do when we're in this state of feeling anxious or stressed and unaware. And we've talked about the breathing, just taking a few breaths before you sit down to eat, so that you are putting everything else aside for the moment, no distractions, and that you can be aware when you're eating. The other thing we talked about is we are built for sweet, so relax. And the point is really not to consume too many toxic amounts of sugar and salt. So many of us try to push down the desire for sweets, thinking we're bad, or there's something wrong with me, there are success stories out there. There are people who are able to go without sweets for months, years. It does happen. But if you've tried it and you keep failing, and you see that you're overeating and binge eating on sweets because you're trying so hard to put that rule on yourself, and then you just finally reach a breaking point, and then you go into some kind of binging or overeating on sweets, then it may not work for you to do this 100% never eat sweets for the rest of your life. If you keep trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing, then what we're doing in this class is just exploring new ways and trying new ways. So maybe something you've never tried before is to give yourself permission to eat sweets, and maybe that's once a day. And what does that look like over time? Does it help you relax? And does it help take away the binge eating? So these are just some of the things that we've talked about. Underneath, we have the member share homework for this week. And we are working toward eating regularly and not skipping meals. We're also working on our personal pleasure inventory, and that is things that we can turn to instead of food usually it's when we're feeling stressed or anxious. And this could be, you've already eaten a meal, you're not hungry, you're just reaching for food because you need comfort. You need something, warmth, and there are things that you can turn to other than food, and just trying to notice before you start reaching for food. Also, I talked about making plans to have one treat at a specific time each day. And again, that's just loosely stated. It doesn't have to be just one treat, one specific time a day. It could be one treat every other day. It could be 2 treats a day. Okay, so that's just loosely, that's just a general statement. But to at least kind of consider that and what that might look like for you. And then as best you can, choose a high quality version of that treat. And clean house if you still have things in your house. Now, to clarify here, I was talking with Emily last week to clarify the clean house. Now, if you're like Emily and I, that we have kids and they're really not always going to be eating meat and vegetables and homemade things that, it's pretty exhausting to always have the most ideal meal, especially for our children who don't have the palate sometimes for that. So I think there's nothing wrong with getting healthier versions of crackers, chips, and pretzels. So if you notice what it says here, I'm talking about the mass-produced poor quality white flour products with the added MSG and added fake sugars and added colors. And so that's what I was kind of hitting at there, but certainly not to throw them all out. I was specifically targeting the mass-produced poor quality products. And then the last one says, make a list of all the benefits you expect to receive once you've reached your goals and weight with eating, weight, energy, fitness, and health. So just on those homework ones, is there anything that comes up that you ever either have done or you're thinking of doing or you could do better at? You think that it would give you some value to add into your life? Is there anything jumping out of the homework assignments that speak to you?
Well, I was just in general just kind of thinking about people that I've known and who haven't eaten, basically meat and veggie diets, and that have been really happy, pleasant people to be with. And the people that come to mind are, we had an elderly couple that lived down the road, but they did eat basically meat and potatoes and veggies. But there was always cookies in their house. There was always, she baked, but I think there is a certain level of happiness and gratitude that gives you a lot of wiggle room. You don't. I don't know, I think it changed, kind of like what they were saying about stress, it changes how your gut absorbs. And so when you have a healthy, happy mindset outlook, I feel like it gives you more wiggle room. And I think, with kids, they kind of naturally have that, right? Mm-hmm. They're just naturally more optimistic and able to let things come and go. And so I was just pondering that as I was listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what I strive to do in this class is to give ideas, but we're all so different that these are just ideas, and they may actually.
But they weren't mass-produced cookies. They were her homemade cookies with a hickory nut on top, and so that. it was, and she cooked with butter. She didn't cook with oils, and so it is different, I guess.
But they were happy. Was that what you?
They were happy, hardworking people. They had a vegetable garden, and she was a devout Catholic, and so she would do her rosary walk every day, and that was just who they were.
So they were somewhat of an inspiration, I guess, to you.
They were like our grandparents that didn't live near us,
Mm-hmm.
the closest grandparents.
Mm-hmm. And I think also based on, there are so many things, like we were talking before too about, I do like to cook, but not everybody likes to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And I choose to, at this time, other than my classes, I choose to not work outside the home because I feel like being with my young children is really important right now, but that's not everybody's choice either. Some people being at home and caring for their children is not going to work for them either. So we all have these different choices, and we're just trying to find a way. But food is such an important relationship in our lives that if that's not working for us, then it causes lots of pain and suffering. So we're just trying to work on the relationship with food so that hopefully the other relationships in your life and your purpose in life and all that will just kind of help fall into place so that you can have joy in your life. So anything we talk about, it's kind of an exploration. It's like, try this. How does that make you feel? Did you like it? Because there's no one diet here that I'm recommending. So,
no. Like I said, basically they ate meat, potatoes, and veggies. And so that was the center of their diet.
Okay. And not a lot of processed food as far as you know?
No, hardly any processed food. So she baked all their own bread and everything.
And so then for those that don't like to cook, thank goodness there's lots of options out there now
Definitely.
that are healthier. I know for a while I was on strike. I wouldn't bake because everything I baked was healthy and my kids wouldn't eat it. So I didn't bake for like 6 months because I was really tired of trying to make healthy muffins. I don't like it. And I'd make something else healthy scones or cookie type stuff. And I don't like it, and I was just so frustrated at some point. I'm not baking for 6 months. So I started going to National Grocers and I just bought everything. I bought muffins, and for some reason, if it came in a package, they were happy. But the good news is I don't have to do that anymore. I don't know what shifted or changed, but now I'm back to making muffins and breads and whatever, lower in sugar, products that I'm okay with. And now they'll eat them. So they just had to get a little older or something. I don't know. So it's just okay. Also, things change.
I know a mom of an autistic child that keeps the Pizza Hut pizza box, and she makes healthier pizza. And her husband runs around the house and delivers it. Because if it doesn't come in the Pizza Hut pizza box, he won't eat it.
I should try that with my kids. Oh goodness, there is something about that with my kids too.
Yeah,
they for some reason I think part of it is like chicken tenders, for example. When you get chicken tenders from the store or nuggets, they're round, and I think my son, it has to be round, or it has to be, it's such a visual thing, whereas mine, since they're homemade, don't look like the ones out of the box, and he just sometimes can't even get past just the visual of it. So it's very interesting. But anyways,
I can imagine you cookie cuttering.
I haven't quite stooped to that.
You can try it, but and then be like, and then try these. These are the scraps.
Yeah.
Mine came on.
Yeah, that would be fun. Anyways, I was reading this is another book that I think complements Mark David's work like really, really well, that the Intuitive Eating Workbook. And this is by Evelyn Treebowl and Elise Reich. I just think this book complements really, really well with the Slow Down Diet book of Mark David's. And so I like to use both. And by the way, I did look on Amazon if anyone's interested in this, the Intuitive Eating Workbook. It sells for just under $20. It was like $18 and change. So if there's stuff that I mentioned in there and that's calling you, go for it, because there's a lot of good stuff in there too. And what I was reading in this week, it says why unconditional permission to eat is vital and the deprivation setup. So again, this goes back to trying to break free of the diet mentality. And I know I hit on this a lot, but I think it's so important. It talks about anytime you're deprived of something you like or need, you begin to long for it. And that this deprivation effect is profound in dieters, because we've been told this is bad, stay away from that, this is a lot of calories, this is a lot of fat, this is a lot of sugar, that kind of thing. And so what happens then is people on a diet, they often create these rigid rules around certain foods that will dictate what they can and cannot eat. And they're not listening to their body wisdom. They just have all of these rules. And trust me, I've had a lot of rules that I've had to take a close look at. And some of them I would say are still there. I still have some of these rules, but I'm breaking down the walls pretty good. I do know that I still have a hard time with any processed food. And if it's a cheaper food that, you know, we might have out at a party or something, I still have some stuff about that. So, you know, according to what she says in the book, is even to release that just a little bit. And so, see, I'm still a work in progress too. But so then she talks about living and eating by the rules are great. It works fine until something goes awry. You get stressed, or you're just so overly hungry because you put all these rules in place, and when you can eat and when you can't eat, and now this, and then sometimes you might find yourself just really, really hungry, or you find yourself in an emotional state where you're just breaking down. So it works really, really good a lot of the time until something goes awry. And then all restraint is broken. And then it becomes this binge eating or overeating. And that's what we find ourselves doing a lot. Do you notice that you do that at all or not at all? Because you have, in my opinion, you haven't been on a lot of diets. You don't have the diet mentality. I mean, honestly, to me, you have made peace with food quite a bit. I mean, you don't have as many challenges as certainly I think the majority of women that I've worked with. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that where I mess up the most is emotional eating, or like, yeah, just so like say, or stressful eating, and then hurrying, and that's where I just eat too much, and but it's hard to slow down and notice when you're in the middle of that. And so I think that's where I fail. So with my youngest, we went through a period of like, that's a no food, that's a no food, that's a no food. It's in the produce shelf, okay. It's in the meat shelf, okay. So there was a phase that we went through that was very restrictive until we got his diarrhea under control. And you know, I was afraid of food, afraid of like, okay, what am I gonna feed him that's gonna make his gut go crazy again? And so I went through that phase, and gradually I still kind of feel guilty by letting him eat things that really are not on his list, because it does cause him nasal rhinitis, which is just, you know, the tissues in the nose swelling and then making it hard for him to breathe through his nose. And then at night, then he snores and he doesn't sleep as well. Mm-hmm. And then that affects his whole behavior. But I don't like being the food police. And even though I know that that's the healthiest food for us. And so I still struggle. I might seem like I don't struggle, but I do, because I know what healthy is, and I know how healthy feels. And, but, it's just easy to grab that bread off the frozen shelf at Natural Grocers, and it's easy to, but then your child has to feel normal around his friends too, right? And so, when your child is best on just meat and vegetables and, an apple here and there, that's hard to do, to make him look like, you can't make a piece of roast look like a sandwich. So
Well, it does get more complicated when you have medical issues that are showing up, because this is mostly speaking to people that don't have medical issues. We place the restrictions on ourselves because of psychological ways of thinking, something we read in a book, something our mom told us, something a friend told us, and we've created these restrictions. I think the majority of the time, not on a medical situation. It is different when you have a medical situation. Sometimes, what I'm talking about here, it isn't going to work. I met a mom, well, I've known her for a long time, but she was describing how if she isn't very, very specific with her daughter's diet, she will get seizures again. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but she can't deviate from the diet. She has to have those restrictions in place, or else her daughter's going to have seizures. That's a whole different thing. And how old is your son
He's 7.
Okay, so he's pretty young yet.
Yeah.
By the time he gets to be about 12, then he will probably be able to choose. Am I going to eat this and then I'm not going to be able to breathe at night?
Yeah.
Or, so.
But he's at school, and then there's the whole being accepted by your peers and being like your peers. And
do they have treats and stuff at school, or?
Well, it's just like, so it's not so much treats, because that only happens at like 3 parties a year. But they sit down to lunch. Every kid has a sandwich, or they have hot lunch, right? And then there's Joe, who I used to send like homemade jerky and, finger veggies, and that was his lunch. And they tease him like, and
really?
And so it just got to the point where he wasn't eating his lunches, and then I feel bad because he's not fueled for the day then to go through the day if I don't send. So it's just been this gradual concession.
Not only do you have to prove to his palate, but to his friends, so he doesn't get teased, so that he'll eat it. That's interesting. So my kids never pack a sandwich.
Yeah.
They're
in that later elementary, junior high, middle school kind of thing. So I'm hoping that, eventually Joe will be able to just say, like, that kids won't even notice, because when you get to a certain point, they're not going to pick on you for the food you eat unless it's really stinky or something.
Sardines or something.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that gradually he'll be able to just eat what is best for him, rather than trying to feel normal and be normal.
Yeah. I get it. Okay, so kind of back to the intuitive eating, but of course this has to be based on medical conditions. If you are gluten intolerant, then you should probably have that restriction in place and not deviate from it. You should probably be researching your favorite foods that you can make at home that don't have gluten, that aren't going to affect you, because it's not worth it. It's if you're feeling bad after eating a food and it's got something in it, then I would pretty much take it off limits and look for a healthier alternative that will work with you instead of against you. But that's interesting. So this book also talks about and I don't swear, but it says what the HELL effect, that's what they named this. So, but it says that dieters will tend to evaluate their success or failures of eating based on the current day. So they think that if they go all day without violating any of these rigid rules, they were good that day, right? And so if you deviate from any of these rigid rules and you violate them, then you were bad that day. And I really want to get, the message that you're not good or bad based on whether you violated these rules or not. That's not what makes you a good or bad person, but we tend to label ourselves. We're hardest on ourselves than we are on anybody else. But interestingly enough, they ran some studies and they say that just the idea, if you think that you've blown one of these rules or violations, will cause you to eat more. So what happened at this one study is that they gave dieters, they broke the group up into two groups, and these were dieters that had rules about not eating high calorie foods. They believed that they were not supposed to eat high calorie foods. So they set up a taste testing study, and dieters were told that they would be sampling a high calorie food, but it wasn't. They were just told that it was, but it wasn't a high calorie food. And the results were that if they thought that they had blown their diet because they had sampled this high caloric food, they would go and binge on other foods. So just the perception that, oh, I've ruined it now, I might as well just go and, it's like,
I'm bad, so I might as well just wallow in my badness.
Yeah. So again, that's where I think the intuitive eating can really help, because there's no good or bad days anymore. There's not going to be any good or bad days. So trying to get used to that, really no food is off limits. And so if you have it, you don't have to say, well, I blew it now, I better just go eat, whatever else, and then overconsume. It's like opening it up that you can have anything that you want, just eat with awareness. And I am playing around with this a little bit in my own home, quite a bit. I'll have to share a little bit more, but also just the anticipation of starting a diet. Oh, I better eat all these foods that I'm going to be. So many of us will do that. Like, okay, when I'm on this diet, I'm not going to have chocolate. I'm not going to have ice cream. I'm not going to have potatoes, or whatever we say. So oftentimes it has been shown in studies then that you will overeat or binge on these items before you start, because you're thinking, I'm going to be deprived. So all of these are psychological things that are going to set you up to fail. So the first thing is being aware that these could be speaking to you. Maybe they don't, because we're all different. We're all different. So again, bringing it to the forefront of the conversation here, and you can think about whether that makes sense to you, whether you find yourself in that situation, or if that doesn't apply to you. But maybe you've never thought about this, or you're unaware of it. Here's another study that they ran. Is they had children that they set up in a room, and they told them that they could eat as many of the yellow candies that they wanted, but you cannot eat the red candies. They're forbidden. And they were the same candies. They were M&Ms. So basically, the color was the only thing that's different. They tasted the same. The chocolate was the same. The coating, everything was the same except for the color. And they just told them that you cannot eat the red ones. But they could have as many of the other. It sounded to me like they only had red and yellow. Guess which color they ate more of? No, the red. Because they were told they couldn't have it. So there must be something special about it. It's forbidden. They ate more of the red. Now, if you get kids that are really, really good rule followers, like my son, I've got one of each of these. My son is very much a rule follower. I bet if you put him in a room and said, do not eat these red M&Ms, he wouldn't touch them. But my daughter, I bet that she would be, why can't I have this red? There must be something special about these red ones. I'm going to try these red ones. What could happen to me? So again, when we put these ideas in our head, like I can't eat chocolate for 2 months, I can't eat chocolate till I lose 10 pounds or whatever we tell ourselves, you're going to think about it all the time. And it's probably, it's part of the problem. It's not the solution. We keep thinking it's the solution. If we give these things up, this is the solution. But in reality, a lot of the times that's the problem, because it has, they call this the forbidden fruit phenomenon. So then if you want to take out your journal, I'm going to ask you if you tend to currently forbid or restrict any of these types of foods. And remember, we're just becoming aware. There's no right or wrong here, but we're just becoming more aware. So here are some categories for you. If you forbid or restrict any of these foods, grains, if so, you can name them. And again, if you know in your mind it's for a medical reason, then that's good to know.